All right, Mr. Wayne, viewer, welcome back. Guess what day it is? It's already Wednesday, the 2nd of April. Right now it is 8:48, and we got out of work not even an hour ago. And today was a good day, a very good day. Lots of reflection today for me. Where I'm heading, what I want, where I want to go, who I want to be. A friendly reminder of how blessed I am to have the opportunities that I have in my life, and how blessed I am to be as healthy as I am. I had a colleague, not going to say her name, but she was diagnosed with cancer several months ago. Fortunately, she beat it. She was telling me today about how she's related to somebody who's going through stage 4 cancer. And she's related to somebody else who had gotten cancer. And we had a customer come in today who has lung cancer. And it's very painful for him to breathe. And I had another colleague who took about 2 months off, who just started working again probably close to 2 weeks ago now, who got pneumonia, right? He said doctors told him he almost died, that if he didn't come in at the time he did, he would have died. And I had another customer come in today. He's a Christian. He actually invited me to a Christian retreat. He said he's going to pay for it and everything. Actually, he already paid for it. One of the men that he was going to take with him couldn't make it, so he told me, hey, if I want to go, I could go, and I'm really considering going. I'm going to go have lunch with him sometime next week. He's going to be out in a different state throughout this week, so we're going to call him on Sunday to meet up on Monday and things and whatnot, talk more about the Lord and God and Christ consciousness and eternal life and what Christ came and what he did for us. And that retreat sounds very nice. It's going to be the beginning of next month. But this man has cancer. And when I was a personal trainer, I've had a lot of clients who are on medications for sicknesses that they're going through, and I'm not going to say I got them off their medications. Some of the clients working with me ended up getting off their medications, whatever they were taking. And the benefits of being healthy and fitness, which is one thing that we teach through this society, right? We need to be healthy. We need to be fit. When you go through the Message of New Thought written by Abel Ellen, and the ideal of New Thought is total, right, self-development. It's total, it's growth, right? It's growing, maintaining, managing all aspects of our life, right? Fitness, health-wise, physically, like it's all under health. Like it's physical health, it's mental health, it's spiritual health, it's financial health, right? Health is the idea of health itself stems through all of these areas of our lives, even our relationships, right? Healthy relationships, and how important health is. And like I said, today was a friendly reminder of how much disease and sickness we actually go through in this world, or at least deal with in this world, and how important it is and to be healthy, and how mindful we need to be of the things we're doing on a daily basis, day in and day out, to help us stay healthy, right? Especially with the majority of foods you could pick up, even on a Walmart shelf. Not saying all the foods are bad. There are a lot of healthy foods, in that store, in a lot of stores. Lots of healthy restaurants out there, lots of healthy options. There's more than enough out there for us to maintain and to have the health that we need. But there's also a ton of other things that will take that away from us, right? And will play into, not being so healthy. And, I said lots of reflection, and with work, we're going to be shadowed by our store manager very soon. We did set a plan for tomorrow, but we'll see what happens. She's going to be shadowing me, see where I'm at. And I asked her for 15 to 20 minutes of her time so I could go over with her what I have been doing, right? How our day is, what we do on a daily basis, and also everything that I've been learning throughout these last 2 to 3 months. And she's going to do that. We set a plan for tomorrow, but we know, we'll see what happens. And excuse the noise, there's a lot going on in this house at the moment, and there's a lot for Mr. Wayne to do, and he has every opportunity to do it. And all the mistakes that I've made in the past, that has me where I am today, and how grateful I am to still have a roof over my head, and a place to work, and a place even like Walmart. Now Walmart is much, much, much better than this societal image that it has, because it's Walmart, right? It's just Walmart. But there's a reason why they are one of the biggest corporations, if not the biggest corporation in the world, especially the wealthiest family in the world. The family isn't the wealthiest people per se, but dude, Walmart is global. Walmart is around the world, and they have a solid system, and you can't deny the results that they have gotten. And as for me, I know I was sharing it last week. I feel different. I feel like a different person. It's hard to explain. I know the explanations we've been going through it throughout this process, right? Just conscientiously changing our behavior by practicing the information found in the system, and how simple yet complex it is, because you have to have an understanding of consciousness. You have to have some spiritual level of understanding to understand the information that we're going through in this book, and how, the idea, we're spiritual beings, and we have an identity in spirit, which is just I am itself, just pure awareness, pure knowing. In this body, I live in this body, right? We live in these bodies. Our mind, we have a mind, we use the mind. Like I said in one of the prior parts, when we say my mind, right, we say my mind. My is implying something that belongs to something else, something higher. My body, my is implying the body belongs to something else, something higher. And we talk about the age-old question, who am I? Right? The only answer to that question is I am, right? I am. I just am. I am a conscious being, no spiritual being. And as we've been going through, there's only one consciousness. There's only one power, one source. And this power, this infinite spiritual being, manifests through everything and exists as everything, and it exists as us. And we are the I am in the flesh, which is what Christ came to give us, what he came to teach us. And this spiritual power, this spiritual knowing of which we are, right, in our unity with the infinite creative mind. It's It'll change you. But we are on part 10 today. There's a lot to cover in this part. We're not even halfway through the program yet. We almost are. We're probably about 45% through. And a lot has changed with my schedules too. I'm starting to open now. Our schedule as of right now, we have mid-shift 2 days out of the week, and then the next 3 days we open, and we've been closing practically this whole last year. So even for us, it's we're doing our paradigm shift with this. We're doing a schedule shift with work, and just our entire, we're still doing everything we need to do throughout the day. We're just doing them at different times now. So going through the process of reprogramming our subconscious, right, as we've been going through with this program, reprogramming our subconscious to be doing things at different times of the day now, as compared to how we've been doing before. And I think that has a lot to do with the exhaustion that I've been dealing with too, because we're going against the grain of a program. But anyway, things are great. Let's go ahead, let's get started. So, introduction, part 10. If you get a thorough understanding or the thought contained in part 10, you will have learned that nothing happens without a definite cause. You will be enabled to formulate your plans in accordance with exact knowledge. You will know how to control any situation by bringing adequate causes into play. When you win, as you will know exactly why. So what he is telling us right there is that we're going to get an understanding in part 10 as to when we really learn the cause of something, when we know how to put an effect into play, no matter what, we're going to get the results that we seek, because we're putting the definite cause in motion. And that cause will invariably reap a specific effect. Right? As we've talked about the apple seed, when you plant an apple seed, you're causing an apple seed to grow. Now, the effect of that is going to be an apple seed. No matter what, an apple seed is going to come from that planting. You won't get an orange tree from an apple seed, right? You're going to get an apple seed from an apple tree, which is what he's insinuating here. When we learn how to set a cause in motion, we can be certain to reap a specific effect. He says, the ordinary man, who has no definite knowledge of cause and effect, is governed by his feelings or emotions. He thinks chiefly to justify his action. If he fails as a businessman, he says that luck is against him. If he dislikes music, he says that music is an expensive luxury. If he is a poor office man, he says that he could succeed better at some outdoor work. If he lacks friends, he says his individuality is too fine to be appreciated. He never thinks his problem through to the end. In short, he does not know that every effect is the result of a certain definite cause, but he seeks to console himself with explanations and excuses. He thinks only in self-defense. Now, what have we gone through too throughout this portion of cause and effect, right? All the way up through this program. In all the other parts he said prior, it's thought, right? It's our thinking. Once we learn the correct way to think about a given situation, we could set a specific cause, which is thought. We could then respond to that situation with a certain train of thought, the right train of thought. And we don't need to think in self-defense. We need to understand that thought is always the cause. And if we fail at something, it could have been the result of our best thinking, like, right? Like, as for me, like, an example, okay, with trucking. I know why I failed with trucking. I failed in a lot of ways with it. Now, I made a failure. Now, you need to understand that you are not your failure. Everyone makes mistakes. But the mistake I made, specifically with trucking, yeah, you know what? I was in a situation, I was over the road. I gave up the place that I had. I gave up two of my babies, two of my kittens. They'll always be my babies. I gave up a lot to move forward with that opportunity. But even when I was over the road, I still was not willing to give up my health, right? I was still doing what I can to make sure I could get exercise in, to get training in. Because for granted, that was one of the things that kept me sane. When you're out for almost 2 months straight, just over the road by yourself, just nothing but driving, right? Driving from state to state, pulling loads, dropping off loads, hitting certain deadlines, and always putting yourself in sticky situations just to be able to get a workout in. I did that. I took that action. And even when I had my preventative accident, I was trying to get to the gym, and there were things that I was not willing to give up to make it, right? Just as an over-the-road trucker, I was not willing to give up the gym. And because of that, obviously, I was always putting myself in dangerous situations, which is not good, especially when you're in a truck, right? A commercial vehicle. It's a very, very dangerous thing. And it was a very humbling experience for me. You know, it's not a mistake that you want to make, especially as a driver. It was very irresponsible on my behalf. I could have really hurt somebody. And thank God that I didn't. Thank God all I did was knock over a railroad arm. And, it's embarrassing. It was very embarrassing. Now, I know I said for me, as a Walmart associate, I do have an opportunity to get back in that truck if I want to. Years from now, later on down the line, whatever probation period, I could say the universe, right? Whatever probation period that I've been going through when it comes to being able to get back in a truck, it's necessary, right? It was a lesson learned, and a big lesson as to, hey, I can't be doing that. Another thing I've learned, right, because it was my best thinking at the time, and that was my first experience with it. Another thing I've learned, especially when it comes to me not willing to give up the gym, I can't be doing over the road, right? I have to have a local position. Before, I didn't have local, right? I wasn't doing local. But local would definitely work out with my lifestyle as compared to just being over the road. Because it was very hectic. I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to do over the road for that extended period of time, that I made the sacrifice for it. But in the end, the mistake I made was something you don't want to make, right? It's a mistake that you want to avoid. But back to causes, right? I caused that situation to happen with my thinking at the time. I wasn't thinking about safety the way I should have been. I was thinking about getting to the gym. There were a lot of things, a lot of thought processes that I let go of, that I needed to hold on to. And, the whole point of this is my thinking at that time, at that moment, is what caused that incident to happen for me. And I caused it, right? That's the whole thing. That's it right there. There is no excuse for it. For granted, yeah, there was a situation, but ultimately my thinking at that time caused that to happen. And I reaped the results. Let's continue. On the contrary, the man who understands that there is no effect without an adequate cause thinks impersonally. He gets down to bedrock facts regardless of consequences. He is free to follow the trail of truth wherever it may lead. He sees the issue clear to the end, and he meets the requirements fully and fairly. And the result is that the world gives him all that it has to give in friendship, honor, love, and approval. And another thing we could say about that situation, and how important it is to find an occupation, occupations, hobbies, work, whatever we do financially for finances. It's very, very important that we find things that are in line with all the other aspects of our life, right? Everything we do needs to be in congruence with each other, like it has to be, in order to really truly succeed in all areas of your life, right? You have to have work that complements your fitness. You have to have work that complements your relationships. Same thing, whatever you're doing for fitness has to be revolving around what you do for work, right? When I started working with Walmart, lots of my training revolved around endurance, stamina, or we average 15,000 steps every day. We're running around the store, not legitimately running, but we're running, right? Customer to customer. Again, mind you, I do practically live there. I work in a super center, right? It's a very, very big store. Our store is the best in the region that we are in, right? We get the most customers, we have the most sales. Most of the leads that stem from throughout the region of where we are, right, comes from our store. I actually learned that today, that most of the leads that are in other Walmart stores around our demographic came from our store, right? It says a lot about our management, which is a very, very great thing. And it's a great opportunity for me because that's what I have in my fingertips too, right? The tools of our managers, right? I have that as a tool for me to move forward. So remember, if you want to be the best, you have to learn from the best. Not only do you have to learn from the best, you have to do the best that you can when it comes to moving forward. 100% student mindset and 100% effort. But back to the fitness, back to the training, and making sure everything in your life is congruent with everything else. That is how you truly succeed, right? You can't have one thing that is divided against something else. And we actually learn that. That's actually a spiritual principle, right? It's a house cannot be divided against itself. Shoot, where was I? My apologies, viewer. Where was I going with all of that? Making sure everything we do is in alignment with each other so we can succeed. Because it all leads back to our thinking, right? Always making sure our thoughts are continuously moving forward and everything that we do is in connection with everything else that we do. All right, it's like a web, right? The web, because we know our subconscious mental habits are 95% of our thought processes. So the things that we think about most of the time will automatically be thought through everything that we do in every aspect of our life on a daily basis. And we could get that thinking, that habitual pattern of thought, operating smoothly through all avenues of our lives. Right, we'll be successful. We'll have that success. Now that's the end of the introduction. Let's go ahead and get started with part 10. Now, abundance is a natural law of the universe. The evidence, it's all right, Mr. Wayne. Just remember, the most important thing about any of this is being authentic. You got to be authentic. You don't need to be perfect. I know my enthusiasm isn't exactly what it usually is, but you know what? We're here. We got to get this done. And we've been going through a lot of changes. Lots of changes. It's hard to explain. Like I said, you have to experience it. The world seems different to me. It seems different to me right now. A brother of mine even says I look different. It's like I'm relearning who I'm becoming another person, right? We're becoming somebody else through this. And as we go, we're also learning who it is that we're becoming. It's very interesting. So abundance is a natural law of the universe. The evidence of this law is conclusive. We see it on every hand. Everywhere, nature is lavish, wasteful, extravagant. Nowhere is economy observed in any created thing. Profusion is manifested in everything. The millions and millions of trees and flowers and plants and animals in the vast scheme of reproduction, where the process of creating and recreating is forever going on, all indicates the lavishness with which nature has made provision for man. That there is an abundance for everyone is evident, but that many fail to participate in this abundance is also evident. They have not yet come into a realization of the universality of all substance, and that mind is the active principle whereby we are related to the things we desire. So he's telling us that abundance is everywhere, that abundance is within everything. When you look at the plant, right, a plant grows in complete abundance. It expands as far as it needs to expand in its roots, so it can grab as much nourishment within the soil, so it could grow and bloom to the biggest that it possibly can. Right? Jim Rohn actually talks about that. He says a tree, no matter what, the tree will grow as big as it possibly can. It's just what it does. And when we look at a tree, let's say an apple tree, when we're talking about abundance, and as we mentioned apple trees before, when you look at an apple tree, in the real extremely healthy apple tree, that tree is going to keep growing as many apples as it can. And unless those apples get picked once they're ripe to get picked, those apples are going to fall to the floor. So another apple could then regrow within its place, right? There's an abundance of apples that will grow from that tree, and that tree will also, like we said about the plant, is going to be growing to be as big as it possibly can be. Right? This is a principle. And same thing with I want to talk about minerals. I remember reading in The Law of Opulence by Wallace D. Wattles many years ago. He talks about how there's enough of everything to go around the entire world for everybody. Or we have more than enough space to grow and crop whatever we need to crop. Like, we have more than enough throughout the entire world. It's just making use of it. Right? All we need to do is make use of what is available to us, which is very interesting because he does say right here, right, we need to realize this abundance that is already here for us. Right? He's saying here, Many fail to participate in this abundance, right? And it's evident that we as a society are failing to participate in the true abundance that we actually have at our fingertips as a species. And a big reason for that obviously is because of capitalism. Yes, capitalism does have a play in it because, right, we build a business, a lot of our supplies and what we will produce will be revolved around what we can get from it when it comes to capital, right? It's just how it is nowadays. Now, speaking of capital, actually, I reread The Gospel of Wealth by Andrew Carnegie a couple days ago, and he talks about how this entire system is built upon the law of competition and individuality. And he says that it's the best system that we've been able to find and create for our race. Better than socialism, better than communism. Because what it does, it obviously provides opportunity for everybody. But what it really does is that it still puts into play survival of the fittest, right? Because we're competing for the resources. We're competing for the resources. We're competing to live with those around us, right? It's just like that. It's just how it is. And competition is not a bad thing. And he does say specifically that it can be hard for the individual, but he talks about how, but for the race, it's the best for the race, for the human species as a race to continue to move forward and evolve, right, in consciousness, right? As we're talking here, like it's all about evolution and consciousness. And the system we have is necessary for the increase, progression of the evolution, for the evolution of man to continue to move forward. It is very interesting. It's very, very, very deep concepts and very heavy ideals that are needed to understand, right? Because we do have to understand why things are the way they are, right? As we're going over right now, cause and effect. The society we live in is the effect of the cause, and the cause is within the thinking of the society itself. Or we need to understand how we even got here today, and why things are the way they are, so we can move forward understandingly in our lives. So we'll be better, and with that, we'll be better prepared to make the proper decisions. And on top of that, I just want to throw this in there really quick too, because I have read before that there's so much food wasted in America alone that even the wasted food is enough to feed the entire world. All right, think about that for a second. That there is so much abundance and so much resources that we do have, but the amount of resources that are wasted in food alone can feed the entire world. Now, again, a reason for that is capitalism. Reason for that is a lot of things. There's a lot of things, right? Capitalism can't be the main problem because there are still those individuals that live here in America that choose not to work. All right, think about that. Again, like there's just so much going on which is causing a lot of things to happen. But our capitalistic system is a part of it. The other part is the fact that many homeless people do not participate in serving society. As for third world countries like that, that's a whole nother story. And it's up to people of wealth. It's up to people like us to be able to build that, to be able to give back to them. And speaking of, in the Gospel of Wealth, since we're on the subject, Andrew Carnegie talks about the best way to distribute wealth. The best way to distribute wealth. Because you do have your individuals that squander the money they earn on things that don't really matter. Then you have those that invest it into things that do, right? Obviously, the investor is going to be making better use of capital. So he talks about how can you build or give back to people that allow them to invest in themselves to be able to build the wealth necessary. Remember, it all lines up with what we're learning here in Master Key. It's all about progressing in consciousness. It's all about expanding our consciousness, expanding our thought processes, expanding our awareness, expanding our understanding when it comes to the basic principles of life and how we could utilize those basic principles and take action on them, use them for the betterment, not only for ourselves, but ultimately for the betterment of mankind. As we said with Jim Rohn earlier, he does make a statement that the reason you need to be extraordinary, the reason you need to be a millionaire is not just for yourself, right? Of course, it's going to be, he does say, because who you become from the process of doing it, the process of being it, but also because you could fight for the causes that truly matter in this world, to fight for the causes, the most needed necessities in our society. And from my experience, again today, those friendly reminders, it's health, right? It all leads back to health, and how much spiritual health is needed, how much physical health is needed, how much financial health is needed. Even health with relationships. It's amazing how people will just throw something away so easily. You know, it can be very sad. Let's continue. So abundance is everywhere. We have to realize and understand the abundance that's already around us. All wealth is the offspring of power. Excuse my reading today. For whatever reason, I've been slurring some words. Possessions are of value only as they confer power. Now what he's saying is the value of possessions are only, right, the value found in possessions are only as valuable as what they confer, as what they give, as the value they give to you. Events are significant only as they affect power. All things represent certain forms and degrees of power. Knowledge of cause and effect, as shown by the laws governing electricity, chemical affinity, and gravitation, enables man to plan courageously and execute fearlessly. These laws are called natural laws because they govern in the physical world. But all power is not physical power. There is also mental power, and there is moral and spiritual power. Spiritual power is superior because it exists on a higher plane. It has enabled man to discover the law by which these wonderful forces of nature could be harnessed and made to do the work of hundreds and thousands of men. And going back, remember what he told us about thought itself. Thought being the only activity which the spirit possesses. That thought is a vibration which brings mind from static motion. Static being something that's just, right, it's in existence. It's static. It's pure potential energy into dynamic energy. Thought being the vibration which moves mind from a steady, static potential form into a legitimate, dynamic, active form, moving mind from one phase to another. Thought is a vibratory power that does that. And as we know, spirit is vibration within itself. And thought being from the spirit of man, or woman, the spirit of mankind itself. Thought is the spiritual power which stems from the spirit of man. It's like the right hand of our spirit itself. That is very interesting, because even though, as we've talked about Christ, and Christ being the image of God in man, and how Christ is the thinking, the wisdom of God within us, right? Reaching Christ consciousness is embodying the fullness of the Spirit of God in our mind. It is legitimately thinking from the viewpoint of God, thinking along the lines of God. Remember, the book of life is the Word of God. It is the wisdom of God. And how Apostle Paul tells us about Christ, and how Christ is within us and is the fullness of the Godhead bodily, right? It is everything that God is manifested in the flesh. And Christ, Jesus the Christ, was a man, as he told us. I am the Son of Man. I am no different than you guys. I am exactly the same. The difference was his thinking, his consciousness, because he was attached to the thoughts of God. And he operated from the logic and wisdom of God in the flesh, which in turn made him God in the flesh himself. Now think about this too, viewer. If we did not have the seed of God within us already, there would be no way for us to understand God to begin with. And the fact that our mind can understand spiritual qualities, the spiritual aspect of our realm, shows that the spirit, the seed of spirit, is also within our mind, because the mind is connected to the body, is it not? We have physical necessities that must be met, right? The carnal portion of the mind. But yet that same mind can engage and understand spirit. The mind being the median between the spiritual higher portion of ourselves and the lower bodily portion of ourselves. Because the mind can and does partake in both spiritual and carnal qualities. Again, the fact that we can understand the spirit and think from the spirit shows that mind itself can and does step into a higher reality, so to speak. And again, back to thought. Thought has been the power which has enabled us to understand these things to begin with, these higher aspects and realms of our lives, right? As he says, it has enabled man to discover the law by which these wonderful forces of nature could be harnessed and made to do the work of hundreds and thousands of men. It has enabled men to discover laws whereby time and space have been annihilated, and the law of gravitation to be overcome. As we talked about with the law of lift, we mentioned that in the beginning part, the fact that we were able to create airplanes that came from the understanding of what the law of gravity was. I discover laws whereby time and space have been annihilated. When it comes to, say, quantum physics and quantum entanglement, we know about quantum entanglement, that if you think about somebody, and that, let's say, I know you've thought of somebody and they ended up calling you, or you ended up running into them, right? And as the law of attraction says, thought will automatically correlate with its object and bring that object into manifestation in some way, shape, or form. Or you've been standing with somebody and they ended up saying something, or you ended up saying something, and then either one of you said, hey, I was just thinking that, right? Because thought is a vibration, and the mind communicates with other minds telepathically. It's spiritual. It's vibration. And back to time and space and quantum entanglement, you could be thinking from somebody that's living on the other side of the world, and then they could call you. I know this because it's happened with one of my brothers. Or I'll be thinking about him, and he'll end up calling me or sending me a message. It happens all the time, and I know it happens with you. Because time and space, quantum entanglement shows that once, right, because me and my brother, we're entangled in the ways that we're entangled, right? We're brothers, we vibe with each other, we just by hanging out with each other and becoming like each other, and like the just gosh damn, there are just parts of ourselves that have become like each other, and we operate on a very specific frequency. And quantum entanglement shows that when two atoms join together, even if they're separate hundreds of thousands of miles, if one of those atoms make a change, it's automatically going to change the other atom regardless of that distance. And that change happens within both of them instantaneously, right? That's entanglement. Now, us as humans, since we're centers of divine causation ourselves, right? And what we're radiating and what we're thinking of, like what we radiate, we choose what we radiate off of how we think and how we feel, and we could choose how we think and how we feel. And obviously what we choose to think and feel from moment to moment is going to determine what we're vibrating on, the frequency we're vibrating on, right? That's our power. That's what we've evolved as beings, as compared to just these simple atomic states that are just were once entangled, and once they are separated, there's still intelligence within them, but they're not as evolved, or right, they're just simple atoms, right? They're not evolved like we are, and a change from one will equal a change in the other, right? Because let's say, for example, I could send thoughts to my brother, but he could choose to stay focused on what he's doing and not let me in, right? Like that's just how it works. Oh man, I need a presentation. I need to make my own presentation, because there is a lot that goes into all of this. But aside from all that, we understood quantum entanglement, and because our understanding of quantum entanglement, we've understand certain specific laws and how certain operations of our reality work outside of time and space. As it doesn't, like I said, doesn't matter the distance between the atoms. If one of those atoms, if two atoms are entangled and they're separate, if there's a change in one, it's going to instantaneously change the other as well. So the operation of this law is dependent upon spiritual contact. As Henry Drummond Wells says, quote, "In the physical world as we know it, there exists the organic and the inorganic. The inorganic of the mineral world is absolutely cut off from the plant or animal world. The passage is hermetically sealed. These barriers have never yet been crossed. No change of substance, no modification of environment, no chemistry, no electricity, no form of energy, no evolution of any kind can ever endow a single atom of the mineral world with the attribute of life. Only by the bending down into this dead world of stone into this dead world, let me reread that. Only by the bending down into this dead world of some living form can those dead atoms be gifted with the perplexities with the properties of vitality. Please excuse my reading today, viewer. Mr. Wayne is a little bit off at the moment. Without this contact with life, they remain fixed in the inorganic sphere forever. Huxley says that the doctrine of biogenesis, or life only from life, is victorious all along the line, and Tyndall is compelled to say, I affirm that no shred of trustworthy evidence exists to prove that life in our day has ever appeared independent of antecedent life. So what he says right here, let's say a rock, for example, he's talking about these dead stones. He's talking about rocks, right? Rocks are made of inorganic matter, yet they are still made of atoms. And those atoms have still come together and held together by a higher mind, a higher intelligence, a higher force. But he's saying these atoms, or these rocks, so to speak, do not have life within themselves as inorganic matter does, because the very cells of which are the very atoms of which they are composed of are not the cells that are capable of expressing life, right? Expressing consciousness. So what he says, only when these dead atoms are animated by a life-giving substance, such as a plant, right? Then, okay, let's reread this. Only by the bending down into the dead world of some living form can those dead atoms be gifted with the properties of vitality, right? I'm also trying to stay focused from all the noise, but this is what we have been training for. But even so, I mean, because we know plants need minerals to live, and they get those minerals from rocks, from soil. And he's saying only by the bending down can the atoms of these dead atoms be gifted with the properties of vitality. Or without this contact with life, they remain fixed in the inorganic sphere. So unless there is a living form reaching down and giving contact to those dead atoms, those atoms will remain dead forever. Without this contact with life, they remain fixed in the inorganic sphere forever. Huxley says the doctrine of biogenesis, or life only from life, is victorious all along the line. And Tyndall is compelled to say, I affirm that no shred of trustworthy evidence exists to prove that life in our day has ever appeared independent of antecedent life. So antecedent life, antecedent is something that existed prior, right? It came before. So he's saying that no life has ever appeared without the existence of an antecedent life, without a life existing prior before that life itself. Ultimately insinuating that even for us, right, as organic beings, we know that we're made inside and out of the power of spirit, that this body cannot live or be animated without the existence of a life that lived prior to it, of an existence of something that existed before it, right? As for matter itself, we know this through quantum physics, that all matter is a conglomeration of atoms, which in turn are made from subatomic particles. But all of these came from what we know as the quantum field. Nothing in the material world can exist without the existence of the quantum field, the quantum soup, because this field is the very fabric, the foundation, the energy, the spirit of which all things can come from, right? If you think of your computer, you know your computer needs a motherboard just for it to exist. The motherboard is the foundation of the entire aspects of all the aspects for that computer. And it's also the core of every function of that computer itself. You can think of this infinite spiritual intelligence which permeates all things, animates all things, is the core, the motherboard of every created and manifested thing. That the very functions of our body would not exist without the existence of this life prior to the manifestation of the human in themselves. So continuing on from Mr. Henry Drummond. Okay, Henry Drummond continues. He says, physical laws may explain the inorganic. Biology explains and accounts for the development of the organic. But at the point of contact, science is silent. A similar passage exists between the natural and the spiritual world. This passage is hermetically sealed on the natural side. The door is closed. No man can open it. No organic change, no mental energy, no moral effort, no progress of any kind can enable any human being to enter the spiritual world. End quote. I don't know. I really don't know about that. I mean, I know I've said prior, there are many stories where humans, he may be talking from the viewpoint of our consciousness, our soul, all of which we are being attached and living through this body, or because there are many stories of people who have died, right, who have had death experiences, and they've experienced a life after this life. They experience, and you hear stories about their conversations with just this presence, which they called God. Right? They just have a conversation with this intelligence, right? And no words are spoken. It's just a knowing, right? It's like you communicate or they communicate with this intelligence through just thought and understanding, right? I seen something not that long ago. A man had, I don't know if he OD'd, he ended up dying in his apartment, and he said that from his experience, he's seen himself leave the body, and he said he was having a conversation with God. And I don't remember his exact words, but they were along the lines of, please send me back. I'm not ready to come home. Right? Because he still had duties. He still had goals. He still had these responsibilities. He didn't want to leave his life the way it would have been left if he you know, that's not how he wanted to leave his life behind. Right? He wanted to leave something better behind with his family, with his life. And he was saying how he asked God to please send him back. And God did. And he said he came back to life. And it was an amazing story. It was actually a YouTube short. I don't know his name. But it's a very powerful thing. So when he says here that no human being can be enabled to enter into the spiritual world, I don't know how much I can agree with that. Because people are very spiritual. Angels and demons do exist. I personally have felt energies around me at several points. You know, as we've said, we know X-rays exist, but yet the human eye cannot see X-rays, but we know they exist. Just because we can't just physically see angels around us or demons around us does not mean that they're not around us. Or spirits, right? It doesn't mean they're not around us. I could have a spirit chilling in here with me for all I know, right? Same thing with you. There could be a spirit right next to you for all you know, right? Just because we can't see them physically doesn't mean they don't exist. But now this is continuing on with Charles, okay? No, hold on. Okay, I stand corrected. I was right. Yes, we're continuing on with Charles. So Charles, he says, but as the plant reaches down into the mineral world and touches it with the mystery of life, so the universal mind reaches down into the human mind and endows it with new, strange, wonderful, and even marvelous qualities. All men or women who have ever accomplished anything in the world of industry, commerce, or art have accomplished because of this process. So what he is telling us here, just as the plant reaches down and gives life to the dead matter within the mineral life, he's saying so too does the infinite mind, the intelligence of God, the Spirit of God, reach down into the human mind itself. So we are being touched by the Spirit of God. We are being given life. We are being animated by the Spirit of God. So God is reaching down and pouring His life into our life, His consciousness into our consciousness. And that is a very interesting point too, because I know I said before, when it comes to consciousness, the reason human beings express consciousness the way we do is because of the evolution of our human brain. I know I mentioned Dr. Wilcox and the presence of the pineal gland within the middle of the brain, that the pineal gland has rods and cones within it. The only other body part within us that we have that has rods and cones are going to be our eyes, right? In our eyes, the rods and cones exist outside the eye, right? It's what's picking up on the energies which give us the ability to see, the sight to see. These rods and cones within the pineal gland, as I said right there, they exist inside the pineal gland. And they're responsible for our mental picturing, right? It's what allows us to build mental images. It's the seat and house of our imagination. And it has been said before that even our imagination is our spiritual body itself. Because when you really think about where you are as consciousness, you're operating from here, are you not? Right? Even like you could close your eyes. You cannot see anything that's going on externally, right? You could plug your ears and you cannot hear anything from what's going on externally. But you know, right? You're still conscious. You could still think. There's still an awareness. You could still build mental pictures, right? That is the part of which you are as a soul, as a spiritual living being. Right? If I'm looking at my hand, right, I'm seeing it from here, right? Like this is the seat of awareness of how we're aware of everything around us. It all stems back to the presence of consciousness within our very being itself. Back to how we are going to explain the human mind expressing consciousness. In the experiment that's in quantum physics, when you take, they use an example of a superdome. Okay, you have a superdome, you have tens of thousands of seats. Okay, you have your superdome. In the middle of a superdome is something that's vibrating at a certain frequency. And around that superdome is tens of thousands of different seats. And all these seats are attuned, to a certain type of frequency. Tens of thousands of different types of frequencies around this one central frequency. And whatever you're vibrating that central frequency at, the only other frequencies are going to resonate and move are the other frequencies within the superdome, right? Within all of those seats. Or you could have 10 of them out of those tens of thousands of different material that vibrate at a certain frequency. Only 10 of them are going to vibrate at the frequency the central dome is vibrating at. Now that shows resonance, right? Resonation. And that's how attraction would work. And how when we attract things to us, creating that vibration, we're creating that electromagnetic field. We are sending out vibrations and we're vibrating on the same frequencies that are in alignment with what we are vibrating. And that's how we attach and align to a like environment, and how we can create the environment and the people, be surrounded by the people we want to be surrounded by. But the point of that, and why I bring that up, because a human brain is vibrating at the level necessary to receive and manifest the vibration of consciousness itself. Because we know consciousness is infinite in its vibration, it's just vibrating. And it has been said in the three initiates that this infinite mind is vibrating so quickly that it's practically at a standstill, which would insinuate that our seed of consciousness, our central point of awareness itself, that our brain cells are vibrating at such a high rate of frequency, it's able to attract and express consciousness itself in the flesh. Right? As he says, as it's like what he's saying, as he is saying right here, right? This infinite mind, which we know is consciousness, reaches down into the human mind, and endows it with life. For the human cannot exist without the connection with this infinite life. And because of this, everything in the world that has been accomplished has been accomplished. Thought, let's continue. He says, thought is the connecting link between the infinite and the finite, between the universal and the individual. We have seen that there is an impassable barrier between the organic and the inorganic, that the only way that matter can unfold is to be impregnated with life. As a seed reaches down into the mineral world and begins to unfold and reach out, the dead matter begins to live. 1,000 invisible fingers begin to weave. Excuse me, sorry. A 1,000 invisible fingers begin to weave a suitable environment for the new arrival. And as the law of growth begins to take effect, we see the process continue until the lily finally appears. And even Solomon, in all his glory, was not arrayed like one of these. Even so, a thought is dropped into the invisible substance of the universal mind, that substance from which all things are created. And as it takes root, the law of growth begins to take effect, and we find that conditions and environment are but the objective form of our thought. When you really look at it, it's like we're like trees. right? As the plant itself reaches down into the dead mineral and endows that dead mineral with life, and as this infinite universal consciousness, as we know, everything is one, and that we are manifestations of that one. That our consciousness is no different than the universal consciousness. The only difference is 1 degree. Remember how he tells us in another chapter, the only difference is how much of that consciousness is being manifested. That we were created in the image of God, it's said in the Bible, and that image is in the image of spirit. We are made out of the same stuff as the universal mind. In that mind, as the tree would reach down and give life to lesser life, so too is the infinite mind reaching down through us and giving life to us. And the human being part of that lesser life, while the consciousness itself is a part of that higher life. It's that infinite life. And as we've gone over in a previous chapter, how Mr. Hanel tells us that everything exists in the infinite mind in its potential form. Everything exists. That all the health you want exists in this infinite mind. All the wealth you want already exists in this infinite mind. All the relationships that you want already exists as a potential in this infinite mind. Right? And then thought, right? I believe it was in the chapter on visualization, when he was telling us the importance of visualizing and what it actually does. And if our consciousness is a channel, so to speak, for the flow of the universal ocean of consciousness to manifest through, and since our individual consciousness also operates seemingly independent, right? Because we still make choices. We're made out of this stuff, but yet we still have the power of choice. We could choose what we're going to think. We get to choose the reality we pull out of the infinite potential of realities, so to speak, that we are capable of living and expressing and manifesting. In the very act of pulling out of the ocean of infinite consciousness, right, that infinite amounts of realities we can experience, our act of thought and visualizing the reality we want to experience is the very act which creates the experience to begin with that we do experience. Right? Like I'm here sitting in front of you reading this. I seen myself doing this and thought about doing it before I actually did it. Right? My thought led me to doing it. When it comes with Walmart and work, what I'm pushing for and my own personal goals, right? These are my thoughts. Like I think of it, I see it, and then I act upon it. Right? Mistakes. Yes, everyone makes mistakes. Who cares? Fix it and move forward. If you're on a probation period, like I experienced with trucking, get over it, right? Get through it. And that includes you, Mr. Wayne. I mean, it took me a while to really say, okay, this is what it is. I'm going to move forward with what I have. It took me a while to get there. But you know what? Eventually you'll get there, because that just turned out to be how it happened. And, you know, here's another thing I do think about, because I was building an e-commerce before I even got into trucking. A big reason I got into trucking was because I had an ideal of running a warehouse, and I knew I needed truckers, and I knew I needed to understand them. That was a big reason I got into it to begin with. But Walmart's also directly in alignment with grooming me, so to speak, to be able to sell product, be a product of the product, and create products and serve customers. That's the most important part. Serving the customer. But anyway, I digressed. Thought. It all leads back to thought, just how we think, how you think. And we know thought is vibration. And the vibrations of thought are, as he said, it drops. It goes into the universal mind. And other like thoughts, other like people, other central points of consciousness thinking along the same lines by electromagnetism, by attraction, you just find yourselves connected with those people somewhere down the line. But as he said too, like we grow into it, right? Like trees, or we know the brain will change in accordance with what we are thinking. And we have to remain consistent with that thought. Like we have to, in order to really truly manifest it. Remember, we have to become it. What a trip. And like I said, we are known by the fruits that we develop. We're known by the fruits that we have. Like the apple. We know the apple. We know the tree by its fruits. We know the health of the tree by its fruits. Same thing with humans. Humans are no different. We know the human by their fruits. And we know the health of the human by their fruits. But what's most powerful about a human is that we don't, if we're an apple tree, we could turn into an orange tree, right? Like, I'm not, I don't want it to sound like some transgender type stuff that's going on in our world today. But you're not barred down to one thing, right? As a human, you can manifest multiple different things. And that's the whole goal, right? That's the power and beauty of being a human being, our ability to manifest the life that we want through multiple different areas of the life, of what life consists of. Like I've already said, relationships, finances, family, your health, right? Like you can manifest the life you want through all aspects of your life. You're not barred down to just one. So the law is that thought is an active, vital form of dynamic energy. Remember, energy is energy, or dynamic energy is energy in motion. So thought is an active, vital form of dynamic energy. It is mind in motion. That substance from which... Oh, I just went back. I know, viewer. Mr. Wayne seems to be having a huge challenge with this today, isn't he? Thought is an active, vital form of a dynamic energy, which has the power to correlate with its object and bring it out of the invisible substance from which all things are created into the visible or objective world. This is the law by which and through which all things come into manifestation. It is the master key by which you are admitted into the secret place of the Most High and are, quote, given dominion over all things, end quote. With an understanding of this law, you may, quote, decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, end quote. So this field of energy, this quantum energy, it's infinite in vibration. It can manifest anything. It's manifested us. It's flowing through us. we know this field is conscious and it's consciousness itself. We know that we are created in its image and we are conscious beings ourselves. We know that everything is one, that nothing can be divided against itself, that all things exist within itself, that you and I are the infinite substance manifest in physical form, and that you and I are individualizations of this infinite creative power. And we have the power of choice, and we could create our own vibrations. So this infinite mind, capable of creating anything, exists in potential form, flows through us. We are it in dynamic form. And through the power of thought, we can pull and create the reality we want through vibration, right? Thoughts and mental pictures and emotion is legitimately, like that Superdome, right? The infinite mind itself is that Superdome. It has within it infinite potentiality. And you, viewer, you and me, as individualized conscious beings, where we are divine centers of causation ourselves. And by choice, we can create our own vibrations, and whatever exists in the infinite mind that is already vibrating at that frequency gets pulled into our reality. That's what he's telling us, right? Thought is an active, vital form of dynamic energy, which has the power to correlate with its object and bring it out of the invisible substance, to bring it out of the infinite mind as a tangible reality from which all things are created into the visible or objective world. So you're literally, it's like, we know physically we could reach our hand out and grab something, right? Like this lamp is here. I could reach my hand up physically and grab the lamp, and I could pull it down and have it right here next to me. He's saying that exact same process happens with the power of thought, right? We're literally reaching out into the infinite mind with thought vibration, right? It's happening on the subtle plane. It's happening on the quantum plane. It's happening in the spiritual plane, the quantum field. In our mind, thought could be like the hand, right? Could be, as an analogy, it could be in correlation with our hand, right? As we're reaching out with the hand, we're reaching out with our thought. And the thought goes out, it goes traveling the infinite mind, right? We can only reach so far physically, right? But thought can reach beyond. It could reach beyond. It can go. It just goes and it travels through the infinite, and it's attaching to other like vibrations, and the things are just being pulled. It pulls around us. It pulls the thing we are thinking about into objective form, right? It becomes a legitimate experience. That is why we always have to be mindful of our thinking, right? Because we're decreeing it. Decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee. Remember what Job said, the thing I feared has come upon me. Job decreed what he had feared, and he experienced it. He pulled that reality out of the quantum world, and it became an experience for him. That is why you always have to think about the things you want and to look at the fear with courage. You have to. You have to have courage, because your very thought is going to determine its end result. In the end, your thought determines the end result. King David, when he faced Goliath, he had absolutely no fear. All he seen was Goliath on the floor. And he literally told him that the Lord is going to put you into my hands. And it happened. There was no... Remember how he said in the prior, it's axiomatic for two things to exist in the same place. You can't think negatively and positively at the exact same time. It's either one or the other. One positive vibration or one negative vibration. It's just how it is. It's one or the other. King David had absolutely nothing, no doubt, nothing in his mind of him losing that battle with Goliath. And he won. He caused that reality to happen. He used the power of God, which is consciousness itself. It could not be otherwise. If the soul of the universe as we know it is the universal spirit, then the universe is simply the condition which the universal spirit has made for itself. We are simply individualized spirit and are creating the conditions for our growth in exactly the same way. And there is an old ancient saying. It's actually Egyptians or taught the Atlantean. He says, as above, so below, as within, so without. Just as the universal spirit has created the conditions of our universe itself, so too are we creating the conditions for our life in exactly the same way, and just through consciousness. This creative power depends upon our recognition of the potential power of spirit or mind, and does not and must not be confused with evolution. Creation is the calling into existence of that which does not exist in the objective world. Evolution is simply the unfolding of potentialities involved in things which already exist. In taking advantage of the wonderful possibilities opened up to us through the operation of this law, we must remember that we ourselves contribute nothing to its efficacy. As the great teacher said, quote, "It is not I that doeth the works, but the Father that dwelleth in me. He doeth the work." End quote. We must take exactly the same position. We can do nothing to assist in the manifestation. We simply comply with the law, and the all-originating mind will bring about the result. And the simple way of complying with the law is obviously not only understanding it, but is continuously thinking the things that we want to think about. Because we become that which we think about, and we attract the things outside of us in accordance with our lines of thought. Right? We don't need to make it happen. We don't need to force it to happen. We just need to think, and it happens on its own with the courage of taking action. Like Now understand what I mean by action. You're just doing, right? You just do it. Especially with these manifestations. Like, I know the Book of Life talks about meditating upon the law of God, the Word of God. And when you meditate upon it, you move into it. Automatically, it just gets built in your system. Becomes a part of who you are. Gosh damn, we're already an hour and a half? We're like, we still have a ways to go. We can do nothing to assist in the manifestation. We simply comply with the law, and the all-originating mind will bring about the result. The great error of the present day is the idea that man has to originate the intelligence whereby the infinite can proceed to bring about a specific purpose or result. Nothing of this kind is necessary. The universal mind can be depended upon to find the ways and means for bringing about any necessary manifestation. We must, however, create the ideal, and this ideal should be perfect. All we have to do is focus on the ideal. Everything else will work itself out according to universal law. We know that the laws governing electricity have been formulated in such a way that this invisible power can be controlled and used for our benefit and comfort in thousands of ways. We know that messages are carried around the world, that ponderous machinery does its bidding, and it now illuminates practically the whole world. But we know too that if we consciously or ignorantly violate its law by touching a live wire when it is not properly insulated, the result will be unpleasant and possibly dangerous. A lack of understanding of the laws governing in the invisible world has the same result, and many are suffering the consequences all the time. So he's telling us, just as if we know the law of electricity, since we do know it, we know how to make machinery that can be powered by it. And we covered this in one of the prior lessons, and depending upon the mechanism that's attached to the electricity is going to determine the results of that electricity itself. Like the example I gave was a fan and a heater. The fan and the heater are running off the same power, which is the electricity itself. But how that electricity is manifested is dependent upon the mechanism of which it is attached, which is the fan or the heater. It's still electricity powering it, but the result of it, one gives off cooler air, right? It's a fan, while the other gives off heat. It'll heat up a room. He's saying the same thing here. Just as we understood the law of electricity, we were able to use it. But if we ignorantly violated the electrical law, it can do unpleasant, right? We could experience something very unpleasant by violating the law of electricity. Seeing the same thing with this invisible law governing the spiritual world, right? The laws that's governing the thought process of man itself. The example I just gave, the example between Job and King David. It has been explained that the law of causation depends upon polarity. A circuit must be formed. This circuit cannot be formed unless we operate in harmony with the law. How shall we operate in harmony with the law unless we know what the law is? How shall we know what the law is? by study, by observation. We see the law in operation everywhere. All nature testifies to the operation of the law by silently, constantly expressing itself in the law of growth. Where there is growth, there must be life. Where there is life, there must be harmony, so that everything that everything that has life is constantly attracting to itself the conditions and the supply which are necessary for its most complete expression. If your thought is in harmony with the creative principle of nature, it is in tune with the infinite mind, and it will form the circuit. It will not return to you void, but it is possible for you to think thoughts that are not in tune with the infinite. And when there is no polarity, the circuit is not formed. What then is the result? What is the result when a dynamo is generating electricity? The circuit is cut off and there is no outlet. The dynamo stops. How is this possible? He's saying, right, we know in part 6 he talked about the brain. Okay, the brain is the mechanism of attachment. Right, we know the brain is the circuit. Or we know the brain and the structure of the brain changes in accordance to what we are thinking. And we know our thought processes are not limited to the evolution of human brain itself. Right, we could create new neural pathways and new experiences by the simple act of visualizing. Remember, consciousness exists and expresses through the brain, but it is not the brain itself. The brain is simply a mechanism. It's a tool for consciousness. But, because what he's saying, he says it's, right, we know it's possible for us not to think along the lines of nature. He's saying when our thought processes are in tune with the infinite mind, we're forming a circuit with the infinite mind, right? Our mechanism, just like how electricity, right? We know this infinite mind is flowing through us. And we know, like with the electricity, how that power, the power of electricity is used is dependent upon the mechanism which it is attached. So what he's saying, how this infinite creative power is used is dependent upon the mechanism which is attached to it, which is our consciousness, our brain. It's dependent upon how we attach our thinking to the infinite mind. We do that through understanding the law. Right? Saying if your thought is in harmony with the creative principle of the universe, of nature, when you are thinking along the lines of creation, you're thinking from the viewpoint of creation, you are in tune with the infinite mind, and it will form the circuit. And being in tune with the infinite mind, your brain, your body will form the circuit for the proper manifestation of this creative power. It will not return to you void, but it is possible for you to think thoughts that are not in tune with the infinite. And he's saying, if you're not thinking along the lines of nature, if you don't bring your mind into congruence with how this creative universal principle works. You are being cut from the circuit. There's no polarity. Right? He says right here. Okay, where is it? He says there's no polarity. He says, it is possible for you to think thoughts that are not in tune with the infinite. And when there is no polarity, the circuit is not formed. Excuse me. And I mentioned this before, humans, right? I know I mentioned trees, like we're biological computers, right? We're batteries of nature. We're nature's batteries. In you know, like I said, depending upon the mechanism that's attached to the electricity will determine how that electricity is used. If that machine is not plugged into the electricity, there's absolutely no power whatsoever. There's no circuit, there's no polarity, there's nothing going through the machine. This is what I'm trying to figure out. We know that this life flows through us. We know that this life is us. We know that no matter what, we're conscious. I mean, for the most part, people are conscious. I hope people are conscious. Right? We know we are conscious beings in this flesh. And we know that the subconscious mind is the Father within us, right? We don't need to make our hair grow. We don't need to make our nails grow. We don't need to make our heart beat. There's the infinite intelligence, the infinite mind within us doing that for us. Like Christ said, it is not I that doeth the work, but the Father within me, right? The power inside me that's doing the work. When it comes to this circuit, right? Like where is the line of divergence between not having the circuit and having the circuit? It has to exist just in the realm of human consciousness alone, but it has nothing to do with the subconscious mind. Because the lack of understanding or not knowing it does not insinuate us not being alive, right? Like we're still, whether the circuit is formed or whether we think in alignment with natural law or not, we are still alive. Our heart is still beating. We're still connected to the infinite mind. But the disconnect happens in consciousness alone. Right? That's it. That's where it has to be. Right? It's just in human consciousness alone, like your own personal scepter of consciousness. It has to be, right? Because conscious power, if you're not connected, this leads back to what he was telling us in the first part, right? We have to have the consciousness of it. We already have the power. We have to become conscious of it. It is through being aware of it that we form the circuit, and we could conscientiously manifest the life we want by deliberately setting certain laws in motion, which in this way, with our understanding of cause and effect, it's by the simple act of setting the right thoughts in motion, right? Visualizing it, thinking about it, because through the act of visualizing alone, you're forming the mold, as he told us. We're forming the mold or the blueprint out of which our future will emerge and how we'll experience our lives through what we're thinking from moment to moment during any specific moment. And that thought, as we're going over, goes through and travels through the infinite potentialities of existences of the universal mind. And it pulls one reality out of the infinite number of realities. and we manifest and live that one singular experience. It is thought that does that. But back to the polarity, right? We form the circuit by understanding the law. And through understanding the law, we can apply the law conscientiously. And through deliberately applying the law, we are creating our lives and making it what we want it to be conscientiously, right? We're doing it deliberately. We're intelligently manifesting the life we want by simply setting the natural laws of the universe in motion. Informing the circuit is having conscious power. In other words, that's what it is. It's conscious power. If you don't form the circuit, you do not have conscious power. So yeah, look. And when there is no polarity, the circuit is not formed. What then is the result? What is the result when a dynamo is generating electricity? The circuit is cut off and there is no outlet. The dynamo stops. Right, so you have your dynamo, it's generating electricity, but the circuit gets cut off. Because that circuit is cut off, the dynamo itself will stop. Same thing with consciousness and conscious power. And what he's saying here with the polarity of man in connection with the infinite mind, right? The circuit gets cut off, and there is no, the dynamo will stop. The outlet of which is giving the man the power gets stopped. Wow, that is very interesting, because I sent a text to somebody I met earlier. They're a Christian, and it's quite possibly my favorite quote. She asked me what my favorite scripture was. And I told her I didn't know, because there are many, many great scriptures. There are tons of great scriptures. But I sent her one of what my mom's bought me a gift many years ago by 2 Samuel. It was 2 Samuel, I want to say 22:33. But I told her if I did have one, it would be this one. And it says, God is my strength and power, and he makes my way perfect. I brought that up for a reason, and I just completely forgot. Oh, man. Let's continue. It will be exactly the same with you. If you entertain thoughts which are not in accordance with the infinite, and cannot therefore be polarized, there is no circuit. You are isolated. The thoughts cling to you, harass you, worry you, and finally bring about disease and possibly death. The physician may not diagnose the case exactly in this way. He may give it some fancy name which has been manufactured for the various ills which are the result of wrong thinking, but the cause is the same nevertheless. Constructive thought must necessarily be creative, but creative thought must be harmonious, and this eliminates all destructive or competitive thought. Now, it's very interesting he just brought that up, because just earlier I was bringing up the ideal that Andrew Carnegie gave us when it came to the law of competition. Saying creative thought must eliminate all destructive or even competitive thought. That creation itself would eliminate competition. It's very interesting. Let's see more of how that would be. That is very interesting, because we know competition is mainly filled by ego. Right? It's not It's not exactly driven by love, right? It's driven by the love of being the best, being number one. But ultimately, consciousness, or not consciousness, competition itself, it's more egotistical than anything. Well, creation is, well, it could be taken many ways, right? Because you could create, you could compete through love, for the love of doing it. That's a rabbit hole. Let's continue. I know, viewer, you understand. So wisdom, strength, courage, and all harmonious conditions are the result of power, and we have seen that all power is from within. Likewise, every lack, limitation, or adverse circumstances is the result of weakness, and weakness is simply absence of power. It comes from nowhere. It is nothing. The remedy then is to simply develop power, and this is accomplished in exactly the same manner that all power is developed, by exercise. And he's giving us in this program all the exercises that we need to develop the power that we need to bring the causes, to set causes in motion, to bring the effects which we desire to see in our life manifest. And he's saying weakness comes from not being polarized. Power comes from being polarized. This polarization comes from thinking along the lines of natural law, thinking in accordance with the creative principles of the universe. That's polarity. Well, lack of polarity, not being polarized. You are not thinking from this higher creative viewpoint, of which we are just by law a part of. The only separation is in consciousness, not knowing it. Right? Just because the machine's not plugged into the wall does not mean the electricity itself doesn't exist. The electricity is there, waiting to power something. It's just waiting for the proper circuit to be formed. Likewise with you, viewer, your power already exists. You are already connected to it. This infinite mind, God, is just waiting for you to form the circuit, to connect with it, to express it, which is all that Christ is. Remember, Christ is the fullness of God, the fullness of the Godhead bodily, the fullness of all God is in the flesh. And Christ is the image of God in man. This exercise consists in making an application of your knowledge. Knowledge will not apply itself. You must make the application. Abundance will not come to you out of the sky, neither will it drop into your lap. Oh, excuse me. My apologies. Hiccups be gone. But a conscious realization of the law of attraction and the intention to bring it into operation for a certain, definite, and specific purpose, and the will to carry out this purpose will bring about the materialization of your desire by a natural law of transference. If you are in business, it will increase and develop along regular channels. Possibly new or unusual channels of distribution will be opened, and when the law becomes fully operative, you will find that the things you seek are seeking you. That is why when it comes to your goal, you must always do what comes in front of you. Because remember, the law works step by step with where you are. You have to grow into it. And it brings you the things you need, your next step, with climbing the ladder, with bringing it about. And you have to take action on those steps. Those are the channels. That the law is literally working to place the proper channels around for you. What? Because remember, as God does for you what you can't do for yourself, but leaves you to do what you can. Because there's this thing you want to create, and here's you on one side with the image moving toward it. Here's all this side is the infinite mind, slowly dropping things in front of you as you're moving towards that goal, while still setting everything up over here, bringing it to you, right? It's creating the channel for you to manifest it on this whole side, while you're taking the steps one by one to bring it into reality. That's the law. He's saying it's a law of transference, right? Law of attraction. If you are in business, look at what he says. It will increase and develop along regular channels. So the channels you already have open, the ways you're already doing it, will increase. It'll increase in those ways. Then he says possibly new or different channels of distribution will become open, right? New ways of doing or adding into what you're already doing will open up for you. These things will just come to you. And when the law becomes fully operative, you will find that the things you seek are seeking you. So as you're simultaneously doing what you're doing to achieve it, the things needed for you to fulfill it are also coming to you simultaneously. This week, select a blank space on the wall or any other convenient spot from where you usually sit. Mentally draw a black horizontal line about 6 inches long. Try to see the line as plainly as though it were painted on the wall. Now mentally draw 2 vertical lines connecting with the horizontal line at either end. Now draw another horizontal line connecting with the 2 vertical lines. Now you have a square. Try to see the square perfectly. When you can do so, draw a circle within the square. Now place a point in the center of the circle. Now draw the point toward you about 10 inches. Now you have a cone on a square base. You will remember that your work was all in black. Change it to white, to red, to yellow. If you can do this, you are making excellent progress and will soon be enabled to concentrate on any problem you may have in mind. When any object or purpose is clearly held in thought, its precipitation in tangible, invisible form is merely a question of time. Quote, the vision always proceeds and itself determines the realization. End quote. That is from Lillian Whiting. And I just read to my brother, I sent him a picture the other day. Proverbs literally says, the man without vision will perish. The person who has no vision will perish. That you must have a vision in mind. You must know where you are going. You must know what you want. And he's saying for an exercise, he has us drawing lines, 2 horizontal lines, and then perpendicular lines connecting, or vertical lines connecting those horizontal lines together to create a square. And in the middle of that square, he's having us draw a circle. Then in that circle, he's having us draw a point and pulling that point towards you to create a cone. So you start on the wall with the square. Then you draw a circle in that square for the circumference of the cone, we can say. Then you're drawing a dot within that circle, and you're pulling that cone, that dot, towards you from the wall, which in turn will create the cone, right? We have to be able to see that mentally. And he says, you're doing this first in white, then in black. Change it 2 different colors. Try to see it, that cone on the wall, in multiple different colors. See a red one, a blue one, a green one, a white one, a yellow one. Try to see it in all colors. Right? Saying we do this again for practicing and exercising the imagination, because our ability to imagine is what allows us to penetrate. As he said, we penetrate into new modes of manifestation through the process of imagination itself, because imagination is what allows us to give that vision, to create that vision, to create the ideal. And again, in order for this process to work, we have to know what it is that we want. Understanding the law, as we can say, understanding the law is what's creating the polarity, right? It's what's giving us the power to be able to do something deliberately. But in order to really set it in motion, we have to know where we are going. We have to have a vision. We have to know what we want. So last one here, and then that is going to be the end of this part. It is a quote by Emerson, and Emerson says, "A vivid thought brings the power to paint it, and in proportion to the depth of its source is the force of its projection." End quote. Now again, Emerson is basically talking about imagination, right? In proportion to the depth of its source, in proportion to the depth of the individual's imagination, is the force of its projection, is the ability for it to project, to manifest, to move forward. With that being said, that is the end of this part. If you made it to the end of this part, congratulations. Thank you for watching with us. We know this one was a little bit lengthy, but this program works. It really works. I'm becoming a different person, and I know I said from the beginning I was going to do this in front of everybody, but doing it myself, like it said, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path, right? The ideal that I had when I started it, I seen its possibility and how it was going to be good for me from the beginning. But now that we're actually doing it, I'm experiencing it. And the experience is it's changing, it's life changing, I'm changing. And we have to keep going. We committed to this. We are committed to this process. And I know the first time when I did this, I was 21 years old. I was a kid. I mean, I'm still a kid in the grand scheme of things. I'm 31, but we're not a kid. Like we're in the beginning of, this is the beginning of our adult, like truly adult life. And really, really carrying responsibility. And really doing something with what we know in our education. Really doing something with it. That being said, brother, sister, viewer, it is 10:52. It's about to be 11. Mr. Wayne needs to eat. I gotta take a melatonin shower. I gotta go to bed because I gotta be up. We have our community to serve tomorrow. 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 We got our practice for this week. We are going to continue visualizing too with moving forward with Walmart, getting that lead position, that management position, and slowly but surely, got to keep growing into it. Like I said, we're mastering our department, and we got to keep forming that circuit. That's what it is, isn't it? We're forming the circuit. I'll see you next week.